Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Storytime with the Historists with your host, Miss Dumas.
And Mr. Boreen.
Mr. Breen, how you doing today?
Dude, I cannot complain. The sun is out. It's nice. It's outside weather. I wish I could be more outside, but you know how it is.
Yeah, it's been a really busy day today. Like I've had a lot to do for a day that I didn't think I was going to have much to do at all.
I'm gonna go play hide and seek with my kids later. It's gonna be awesome.
Are you going to hide for like 45 minutes at a time?
That's the plan. I'm gonna
Yeah.
hop over the fence. It'll never find me.
Oh, fantastic.
Dad will be back in an hour.
So, Mr. Breen, today we are going to talk about the Industrial Revolution.
What? The second most important revolution of all time. I'm feeling it.
Oh, me too. This is like the one of the best moments. I mean, best and worst at the same time for world history. But did you just say one of like the two biggest transformative events in all of world history?
I think so. This is definitely a solid number two. And so this is AP World Modern. Mm-hmm. We haven't had AP World Ancient because that doesn't even exist yet. Right. And so maybe we'll go kind of take a walk back in time through history. Let's go back 14,000 years to the Neolithic Revolution. So here's what's going on for humanity if you don't know, which you're forgiven because it's AP World Modern, right?
Can I
essentially what happens here is,
can I do our transition?
We're doing it. Yeah. Good.
Copyright infringement, ladies and gentlemen. Copyright infringement.
Uh-oh. I didn't hear it.
All right.
Wayne's World. Party time. Excellent. So before human beings had basements to play rock music in, they were out wandering around, finding food to eat. Sometimes they were successful in killing something to eat. Sometimes they're successful in finding something in the water and eating that. But we are hunting and gathering. This is how we are getting our food. And then, maybe it's our farming mothers. History Channel dramatizes it and says, it's probably somebody who just looked over and was like, hey, that thing is growing there. Let's eat it. And then maybe the next year they notice that it's still growing there, or something grew out of a trash pile, or who knows exactly how this happened. But all of a sudden human beings start to figure out we can control some of these plants and we can farm. Boom. That's the Neolithic Revolution. We are farming. And all that happens from that moment in time, roughly 12,000 BCE, all the way up to now, now being 1750, the Industrial Revolution, is we get a little bit better at farming, and then we get a little bit better at industry, and then we get a little bit better at having small villages, and villages lead to towns, and towns lead to cities, and cities lead to empires. And so we start to see that, but essentially the model doesn't change. Humanity is linked to farming. We're linked to our land, and we're not really becoming that much more complex. The likelihood of recognizing how we lived, in 1750 to people who lived in, let's say, Roman times, they wouldn't have been that shocked. There would have been shocking things, but.
So what you're saying is the methods in which how we live life, how we made food, how we made goods was pretty similar, say, from 100 CE or even 1000 CE all the way up to 1750.
All the way. It's basically the same, right? And that big change, that's our biggest revolution, right? But in 1750, we hit number two. And number two, while maybe not quite as important for farming, we could say maybe is more impactful for how we live. So will you kind of just take us through what happens in 1750 and the Industrial Revolution that really changes things for humanity?
Okay, yeah. So the reason that the Industrial Revolution is considered the second biggest transformative event in world history is because it does the same thing as the Neolithic Revolution does. It changes everything, every aspect of society. And so what ends up happening in 1750 is we've got a conversion of events. We've got tremendous wealth that's being accumulated because of mercantilism in the colonies. Lots of people are making money. We have huge population growth, especially in Europe, as a result of the new food sources from the Americas, specifically, potatoes, that's the big one. And so this huge increase in food leads to an increase in population. And the problem that people run into relatively quickly is the traditional ways of making things aren't keeping up with population growth. Up until this time period in history, we have what's known as the cottage industry. And so individual families would make what they needed for their individual family, whether it's clothes or plates or spoons or whatever else it may be, right? And then maybe be able to make a couple shirts or a couple bowls or whatever else for some businessmen who don't have time to make it for themselves.
That small kind of original family industry, small business owner type of model
Hmm.
where you know, like the Smiths are literally the blacksmiths, that sort
Hmm.
of thing, right? And
Right.
so, but now you have more people, and more
Yeah.
people means more products,
Right.
and not everybody's going to be able to make their own stuff. So now you've got this like that cottage industry, and I'm imagining like a Rapunzel-esque type of character, somebody who's in their house, they're spinning
Right.
and the wool or the cotton or whatever it is to make the pants, and some guy kicks in the door. He's like, "Oi, oh, I want me trousers. Where's me trousers at?" And then she's like, "I don't have your trousers yet today. It's because there's so many orders for more pants." And he's like, "What?" And then this whole thing of like people needed stuff and they
Right.
can't get their stuff, and that's a problem, right?
It's a huge problem. First of all, kudos to you on your British accent. Very impressive.
Hey,
Very Monty Pythonish.
I've been watching a little bit of Life
I
of
like
Brian.
it. I like
Yeah,
it. Very
I
nice.
did.
So yeah, that's what happens. They simply, as the population grows, the cottage industries, the homespun materials cannot keep up with the amount of people. They can't produce. Even
Right.
if they were working 24/7, every single day, they still couldn't even get close to the amount of goods that we now need as the population grows. And so the population isn't going to go down, right?
No.
People aren't going to stop colonizing because the cottage industry can't keep up. There's too much money to be made in it. So the only other option then is to increase production. And this is where we get that whole invention is the mother of necessity, right? Is that how it goes?
Necessity is the mother of
Mother of
invention.
invention. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Hello.
I know what you
Whoop,
were talking about. I know.
whoop,
Yeah, yeah,
reverse.
yeah. We got it.
Um, they had to figure out a way to make more products, specifically clothes. That's where this all really originates. And
Yeah,
so
I need those pants. Yeah, you got to have them.
trousers, Mr. Breen, trousers. It's England.
I'm not saying trousers. We won a war, so I can say pants.
Pants.
All right,
That's
pants.
that's so American. Like we just chop it off
One
and
more
make it blunt.
pants.
Pants, right? So you do have inventors, keen minds who come up with different ways to be able to speed up the weaving of raw cotton into thread, and then from thread into actual cloth. And this is where we get the creation of the spinning jenny, which basically is an eightfold increase in the amount of thread that can be produced, as opposed to what's happening into the cottage industry. And then we get people using water looms, right? It's
Oh
not just
yeah,
it's not just a single little hand powered loom that you do in the house. You harness the power of wind or water to create bigger machines in order to create a water loom that can now take that increased thread production and increase it into actual cloth production.
cloth and making those big bolts of
Yeah.
cloth, right? So then, but here's my question then, because uh, we're being more productive, and
Hmm.
so I can imagine a scenario where we go back to our woman. She's like, "Oh, I need to make more," and she's maybe got her kids now working in the house,
Hmm.
and maybe there's a couple different spinning jennies, or maybe they're fortunate enough to live next to a river where they
Right.
have some water to run the water loom for them.
Hmm.
But what that I guess the twofold problem is if you have more kids working, you're still having more kids, which means the population,
Creation.
it's a
Yep.
moot point. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just creating more
Yeah.
consumers, more people who have need, and then not everybody lives next to a river that's going to be
Hmm.
able to power their machines. And so, while these inventions seem to be a step in the right direction, I don't think we've really revolutionized process yet. I can see us increasing production, but I don't see exponential growth. So, what really puts us over the edge then to exponential growth? How do we like break fully away from nature and create mechanized industry?
Well, what it really comes down to is two things. Number one, no matter how many spinning jennies you had in the house, it still wasn't going to keep up with production. But number two, we have a revolution with agriculture. And again, this is going to not only continue to fuel the population growth, but it's going to provide the labor we need in order to create this more modern production. See, what ends up happening is as we get more and more of these thinkers or entrepreneurs, these mechanical engineers, for lack of a better word, uh, bringing their ideas together. We get better technology in the farms. We get better fertilizer, faster, and
Mm,
better
yeah,
plows or whatever we want to call it. And what it ends up doing is allowing people to produce more food or plant more seeds or do harvest a lot quicker, which means we now don't need everybody working on the farm. Couple that with the enclosure acts where people lost their land as a result of these big wealthy aristocratic families taking their land back, now we have an excess of labor.
Right. Okay.
And
So that's making sense. Now it's starting to look more a little bit now we have really big changes taking
right.
place everywhere. Okay.
And then what ends up happening as the technologies continue to develop, we go from a spinning jenny to an even more powerful technology that weaves thread, or excuse me, that produces thread. We go from a water loom to a power loom, which is
Power loom.
yeah, which is gonna, and this is all a result of the one technology that is probably the most important in the entire industrial revolution, which is the steam engine.
Is that Thomas Newcomen, and he makes his steam engine to pump out wells and all, or
Right.
mines and that sort of stuff. Yeah, okay. So there's our mechanical engineer.
Hmm.
So we've got, just taking it back, we've got
Hmm.
all these people who are no longer needed on the farm.
Right.
We have more people surviving in the cities, so and people who need work. So the farmers are probably going to move to the cities because
Right.
that's a classic migration pattern that
Right.
takes place. So you have this concentration of people. You have these machines
Hmm.
that can do way more work,
Right.
and you've got this like need to produce all these
Hmm.
widgets, whatever they are, for people. So the stage is now set, but we can't put these giant machines, I assume, inside of your house. Like,
Well, no,
that's
they
not going to work.
right. Most of these machines are going to be like half the size, or if not the full size of some of the. I mean, these are huge, huge machines because they want to produce a lot. So what ends up happening is they're going to move this production, move the resources, everything to one spot, and here's where we get factory production. And
Oh,
so
that's the big game changer then.
that's the game changer.
Gotcha.
That's where we have the workers and the machines and the resources all in one spot so they could produce these goods as quickly as possible. And here's also where we start to see a new development, which is capitalism, because everyday
Mhm.
families and people can't afford to build these machines. They can't afford to build these
No way.
factories. These are people who have become very wealthy as a result of mercantilism
Hmm.
and colonial economies. Okay. And you bring a bunch of these people together and they start investing money or giving money to, say, one person's like, hey, I want to start a factory. I can't do it on my own, but if I get 100 investors who give me, I don't know, $10,000 a piece, I can pay to get the factory made. I can get the machines made, put them in the factory. I can hire the labor. And then now we start production.
Oh, man. And you know what's crazy about this is that's where we're going to start seeing other types of disruption that make
Hmm.
this a true revolution as well. Because now you have all of those factories like springing up, and they're going to
Hmm.
be churning out way more product with way less manpower. But
Right.
that's going to put the cottage industrialist out of work,
Oh, totally.
right?
Yeah.
So those people are going to lose their jobs. They're going to need to find some new way to make some money. The mining industry, which is going to be really responsible for coal and iron
Hmm.
extraction, which is going to go into building these machines and providing the power
Hmm.
source for boiling the water for the steam engines to work. But they need fewer people as well because
Hmm.
machines are doing more work. And so what you're starting to see is these large families and these people who are concentrating inside of cities losing traditional sources of labor,
Correct.
jobs
Yeah.
essentially, and they need to find another way to work. So we're going to get more people actually working, but for less money. And there's going to be more competition inside of the marketplace. And so all the traditional socioeconomic patterns that existed previous to 1750 that
Hmm.
we said wouldn't have been that different to somebody from Roman times jumping into
Hmm.
the future. Now, all of a sudden, by the 1800s, that's all gone. That's
Well, yeah,
changed.
yeah, because prior to the Industrial Revolution, it was just like a subsistence kind of economy. You produced what your family needed. If you were able to produce a little extra, make a little profit, great. If
Right.
anything big needed to be done with the economy, it was done by the government. And that changes by 1800. The government has very little to do with industrial production early on. These are
Laissez faire, hands
yeah,
off.
these are individuals who had money to invest and create this industrial production. And those are the people who are going to benefit from the most. They're going to be the business owners, the factory managers, the entrepreneurs, the mechanical engineers. Those guys are going to make a ton of money because their goal is to make a profit, and they will. For the workers themselves, right?
They're going to be the losers.
Their
Yeah.
only job is to be able to make the machine repeat its action over and over and over again. And because there are so many people now who need jobs as a result of losing their own farmland or enclosure acts or whatever else, else, they have no leverage whatsoever.
No,
They
it's
don't.
a jobs producers market, right?
It is, yeah,
There's such a surplus of workers out there. So now you have situations where, coming home, the guy's not like, "Where's me trousers?" He's like, "Where's me job?
yeah,
I've been out all day looking for a job." And
hmm
she's like, "Oh, I try to find a job too." And
yeah,
now like the little, rugrats or whatever are running in like, "I got a job
yeah,
picking up lint." And so now we have kids working, we have women working, we have
yep,
men working, everybody, and they're all doing the same jobs,
yeah,
which is going to have like these really broad social ramifications
right.
later, which are going to be positive and good. But at the beginning, it's bad. I mean, we
It's
really see
ugly.
the destruction. And so we see raises in poverty and
hmm
crime, the loss of the moral fabric that had
hmm
bound people together through
hmm
not the Victorian, pre-Victorian time periods.
hmm
And now all of that's gone. And then the other thing that's really like when we start thinking about these factories that just popped into my head is a factory is dirty, right?
Oh, it's
You're going to be
disgusting.
dirt, and this is beginning
Yeah,
technology. So like there's no clean coal in the
yeah,
early 19th century. They're spewing out noxious
hmm
foul air. They're dumping stuff into the water. We talked about in King Cholera all the
hmm
nasty,
hmm
awful human waste that was out in the Thames River. But now you're going to start layering into that industrial waste,
hmm
ash from coal
yeah,
furnaces, like toxic Superfund type stuff, and everybody's running around in this kind of
Ugh.
toxic soup, looking for jobs, looking for food,
hmm
living in these really horrid
right.
conditions, these tenement houses. Man, I thought the Industrial Revolution was going to be good, but it's not sounding like when we did Neolithic Revolution, it was like, hey, look, there's
People
more people. We
farm
can
more
have babies.
food.
Yeah, it's like it was
Yay!
good. Now I can imagine a lot of people just being like, oi, this is awful.
Yeah, if you like, we look back at the Industrial Revolution and we're like, hey, that's really good. Mass production goods are cheaper. But I guarantee you, most of the people living during that time period weren't like, wow, this is the best time of my life, because we weren't ready for it. We had no idea back then the impact that industrialization was going to have, because it was so brand new, right? And
Yeah.
this idea that for every job there's like 100 people who wanted it, and so you either took the job, right, and you
hmm
dealt with the crappy wages and the terrible working conditions, because there was no motivation for business owners to change it, because if someone died or got hurt or someone bitched about it, they just brought someone else in to
That's
work. And
right.
so and that, because of that, they could charge low wages, which meant everybody in the family now had to work in order to get enough wages to be able to make any kind of living. And then if you were one of the guys who complained, if you were a father in a factory who complained about the working conditions,
Oh, I
you
lost
got
me arm in the
yeah,
machine.
you got poop canned. They didn't care about you. There was no like social security, right? And so now you're depressed because you can't fulfill your job as a father and provider. And so you're out drinking, which leads to a huge rise in alcoholism during this time period, especially among the men. The women now have lost their traditional role as mother because they've got to work in the factories. The kids no longer have parents. They just have other people who work with them. Like it's an utter destruction for the family structure, without a doubt.
I have my head in my hands right now. Here I was when we started this thing, like, oh man, we're going to go 2 podcasts in a row with like happy,
Oh yeah, no.
good, way to go humanity sort of stuff. The first revolution was so good. The second one's bound to be better. And just like all sequels, the second one sucks.
Yeah.
And and now humanity's at this dark place. And what we do know is like there will be a backlash and things will
hmm
start to get better.
They
And that
will.
is something to keep in mind. The women's suffrage, the labor movement,
hmm
communism as an idea, I know in its practical application doesn't work out too
Work.
well. We all read Animal Farm. We know
Yeah.
what's going on there.
Yeah.
But what we also know is that there's going to be some changes that are going to be made here and things are going to
hmm
get a little bit better. I think the one thing that is going to be interesting, and this is definitely for another podcast, but we
hmm
talked about pollution,
Yeah.
is we still don't know. I mean, the jury is still out in terms of it. We haven't made massive changes to our industrial practices since that first industrial revolution and the advent of the steam power and burning of
No, we
coal
still
and
use
fossil
coal.
fuels.
It's
Yeah.
one of the cheapest fossil fuels. Yeah.
So while we've made huge strides in certain areas, the one area that we don't know for sure, and I think it's something we can do a follow-up podcast and we can start looking at COVID-19 and some of the, when industry subsides, the impacts on the environment and human environmental interaction there. But yeah, there's some really long lasting effects that we still just don't know. I mean, this
Yeah.
revolution is still very much in its infancy. We had to go back 14,000 years to get to the beginning of farming. Who knows what we'll be doing in 14,000 years
Yeah.
if things are
As a
even the same,
result.
but
Yeah.
this has been a big one for humanity. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
it, right? And for all the bad, there's also the
The good.
AirPods and
Yeah.
everything. And we don't have Spotify, and I don't have endless music to keep me happy during quarantine. So there is some good that
Yeah.
came of this, I guess.
And there is, and we tend to, as historians, we like to focus on the negative. Very rarely do we focus on the positive. We focus on everything that goes wrong, so we try to make it better in the future.
Positive is so
I
boring.
know.
It's
And there has
boring.
been like and there has been a change. Like we definitely focus more about the negatives of the Industrial Revolution, but there are a lot of positives. I mean, there really are. We just it's I think as we see the impact of like climate change and stuff as a result of industrialization, we're tending to focus on that. And I think recently we have lost focus about the good things about industrial revolution.
Yeah,
So
I think so as well. I think maybe we'll sign off with this stat. If not for the Industrial Revolution, humanity doesn't hit its first billion and its second billion. We have had the ability to keep more people alive, and do better things for people's lives as this revolution has progressed. And all of those things are owed directly to the Industrial Revolution. No modern medicine, no scientific
right.
advancement. Even as we close the door on the 20th century, the bloodiest century in human history, we've more than tenfold replaced the population that were lost in all the various wars and
Yep.
famines and diseases and all the other awful things that happened in the 20th century. It took very little time to replace all those human beings. And while that sounds sterile, it's really a true testament to what industrial capacity can do for us as a species. No other species on the planet has access to this type of technology, and we have used it for our own personal betterment time and time again.
It's true. Agreed.
All right. We squeaked out a little bit of light through that
We did just
darkness.
a little bit, just a little bit. Well, Mr. Breen, thank you for a delightful podcast once again today.
Always fun. I'm getting ready. I'm going to get my shoes on. I've got my hiding
Nice.
spot in the alley picked out. My kids are going to not find me. So if no, don't worry if you don't hear from me for a little while. I am safe. I'm living my best quarantine life hiding in the alley from my 5-year-old child.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go out in my industrial produced, backyard furniture and sit there and read an industrially produced book on a industrially produced iPad and enjoy a little sunshine today.
I have a stream in my backyard, but I built it with industrial produced things and it's run by a pump. So maybe I'm back to, you can't see it, air quotes, nature.
Well,
All
that's it.
right. Well, I think that'll do it for us, right?
Yeah. So, Mr. Breen, thank you once again. And until next time, you guys, we will see you later.
Bye.